Hi, everybody. John Westbrook here with Descrypto.com, and I'm here with Fraser Brown of DAOAct.org. So, backing up just a little bit, now, is it true you're an Olympic athlete?
Yeah, right. So, I'm Olympian from the Athens Olympic Games, representing Ireland in sailing. I did that for 4 years. Yeah, so transition into business in general. Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, my the journey, if you want to call it, has been from that. Well, before that, I was a consultant and did an MBA, but then from the sport into commercial business and then into sort of social entrepreneur and then into trying to address climate change issues and others. So the transition there was, I was always really hungry to get into business. I mean, I went sailing because I guess I had talent, right? And in my family history, there's a huge kind of history of competing at international level, and I got some of those genes and wanted to do it, but I was never this sort of, like lifetime sailor actually. So I wanted to represent Ireland in the Olympics, and that's what I did. But I was so eager at the end to start the business, and I started the diamond business, with a small website and built up from there.
Yeah, I saw that. That is such an interesting direction to take, and to end up where you are now. I think is fantastic. It's cool to see that journey from our angle. We're looking at obviously the broad brush strokes of it all, but so you do consult with a lot of climate change organizations now, is that right?
Yeah, and that's kind of not an easy game to get into either, but that's where I've managed to get. So I would be advising now three really very probably important, organizations: the International Union for Conservation of Nature, a very interesting organization that predates the United Nations and is a country member organization. So the task is helping them to understand how innovative finance can be used to sort of deliver conservation or climate change or food security wins. Because what the whole development sector realized some good time ago was that they weren't going to get it done with grants, right? So they had to start working with the private sector. And this was a new thing for them. And yeah, no, I had an aptitude for, innovative financial models really. So I've developed a number that have got real traction, and I'm also the sort of director of strategy for a global partnership called the Climate Smart Lending Platform. It's quite a big partnership, and the instrument itself is endorsed by World Bank and Deutsche Bank and IFC, which is big development finance institution. So that's very exciting as well. So we're trying to sort of make that a global thing. But, that leaves a very interesting question, John, where, you could be in a position here with ACT or DAO Act, to raise enough money to make that initiative happen. And you probably read some of my writing about it and where the idea came from. And, it could be a case of, maybe supporting some of these clients, at a high level, for a period of time. But this project will certainly, if it takes off, it will certainly be all consuming and, and a big thing to get done.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so one of the things I noticed when we were doing the research is, and I think this is actually a very smart move, is that you guys have actually hired a developing team that already has experience in blockchain to do the actual development work behind the scenes.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. I'm not sure it would have gone that way if the relationship with Draglet hadn't just kind of blossomed from the get-go. And, in the early stages, way back in the end of last year, when I sort of came to them and said, look, I basically want to turn up and get on the whiteboard with you guys and spend some days. And some of them were like, we don't really work like that. We get jobs, we negotiate, and then we start work, And then the conversation continued and said, you know what, I think we can do this with this guy. Let's see where it goes. And so we sort of melded together, into a project team. And then it's fantastic. And then of course the ICO boom really, really happened. And then you see, which means you have a great deal of projects with a great deal of money. So then we were sitting in a very good position, I felt, and you probably agree, because for the reason that, these projects can basically buy up all the talent out there. And unless you have big resources, it would be very hard for you to do so. So by being in this firm relationship with a company, we're kind of mitigating that risk as well. I published like the whole quotation and pricing. Yeah, I just published it all.
No, transparency. I think
to get this done. This is a great firm that has 5-year track record building exchanges.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't need $150 million to
Exactly. No, that is such a good point. And being as transparent as possible, I think, is key. So why and I think we've touched on this already a little bit, but just specifically, in looking at this project, which, and tell me if I got this wrong, but I guess if somebody was in an elevator with me and we're going up 10 stories and they asked what DAO Act is, from my perspective, I would say, well, it's kind of like, it's really like raising money for social change. So it's like you're melding two worlds together of like a change.org type model plus a crowdfunding principle of getting people involved. But it's neither nor, it's both. Am I seeing that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Great. I would call it a crowdfunding innovation because it doesn't fit into the standard crowdfunding mold. And that's a very important differentiation. And of course, it's very different than change.org or Avaz, which generally speaking, you get signatures on petitions. And they're different they're not decentralized either. But, but to speak to that point of crowdfunding, I use the example of when if you have a pay as you go mobile phone and you want to send an SMS, you don't buy one SMS and send it, you keep your account topped up. And that's really the vision for ACT, is that people everywhere would keep $10, $20 on their account so that they can react and respond to proposals by putting their votes to them. And it's this aggregate pool. Yeah, it's this aggregate pool that funds. So think of it in terms of two layers, right? Or sort of almost one platform within another. So the one we've been talking about is where people kind of react and respond to proposals and apply their votes to them. And when a quorum is reached, that proposal is funded by the smart contract. The other thing is the revenue from buying those votes is the kind of income or revenue of the platform. But the magic really happens in this instance in what we call the curation platform. So in the white paper, it's nicely called the ACE. And there are two tokens at work there, a bit not unlike the Steemit model, if you know it. We make a lot of fuss about the ACT token because the ACT token is kind of the tool or the mechanism of the ICO. But in fact, the action token is probably the more, the kind of more technically sophisticated thing. So what curators do is convert their ACT to action. And then action is a vesting token. Okay. So they can't convert it back to ACT. When they convert it back to ACT, they can cash out of it on exchanges, right? But they can only convert it back monthly over 1 year. So that has a number of effects on the platform. It means that the curators act in a way that's in the long-term interest of the platform. So they don't try to sort of cheat or make a lot of money, a short-term gain to the cost of the platform.
Right.
So
their accountability is really going to reward them if they're going to be good at voting projects that are worthy of votes, or curating projects that are worthy of being curated. Then that's only going to help them in the long run.
Exactly. And also it puts manners on the token itself, because it will be much less susceptible to kind of speculation. It's not some kind of mystical token that nobody understands and the market's putting some crazy value on it based on its network, it's not really that, it's, because there's a solid sort of revenue stream. If you look at some of the numbers on Avaz or Change.org, where we have over 100 million active people, if they contribute $1 a year, it's $100 million, and 15% of that is pushed in Ether into the curation platform and distributed as Ether. Okay. And to reward the curators. But the curation function is quite sort of funky. I do love Steemit, and the curators are busy there, commenting on, asking questions of proposal makers. And there's this sort of critical mass that's reached where the platform recognizes the proposal as what you might call vetted enough, at which point it is pushed automatically to the main Act platform, people's kind of mobile apps, where they are then alerted about it and can vote on it. And so the whole thing is built, to drive quality of proposals landing in people's inbox. And of course, to completely decentralize, where, in this game of the nonprofit game, is kind of fraught with troubles. And I'm not shy about saying that we're happy to be disrupting that. But one of the things that is kind of so disagreeable about a lot of this is that the small pots of money that are available for one type of cause or another, it's such an arduous process to get it. And you would have thousands of applications for, $100 grant. Do you know what I mean? And an 8-month process, the man hours that go into it by this community of people who are doing great work. It's just shocking to me. So, this is all about harnessing the blockchain just to react and to drive change at any speed and at any scale.
I really like that. That was my next question actually on my list, is why blockchain? Why not just do all of this with a custom, built-in token like some centralized projects have done in the past or whatever. But that actually makes a lot of sense. To distribute the governance factor alone is kind of the answer to a lot of those problems of that you're describing of most social projects.
There's no centralized function here.
Yeah, I really like that.
The measures on paper, enough could be done. But what you witness, of course, in the way that governments work, not singling any out, they are not going to change fast enough. And that is a huge threat. And so in my mind, as somebody, who's kind of decided, in terms of career and to tackle it, if you're going to try to address that, then probably the biggest thing is this amplification of citizen voice. Okay, so that they can demand the change that they want to see and make it, happen fast enough.